You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com to see the many different shirts and other merchandising options we offer. Also, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as our podcast channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else our podcast is found. I'm your co-host, Aaron McAtee. Our other co-host, you may have seen him walking out of a great clips with a big old smile on his face. You've probably seen him on a dirt track. He is the one, the only Scott Bowie. Hey, Scott.
Hello, Aaron. How are you?
I am doing fantastic.
Well, you look fantastic.
And our viewers don't know this, but we just recorded an amazing podcast.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
And then also, as you said during the podcast, this individual made me really happy by just recording a nice little 3 to 4 second clip.
Yeah, we'll play that for people later on.
Oh, yes, but we will.
This made, the one we just did made Aaron's, I would say year, easily his year, if not his last decade.
Last decade. Maybe. But without further ado, not to take away, from this episode we're about to play, our guest today is Danny Thompson. And for those who don't know, his dad was the famous Mickey Thompson. He raced drags. He did he did trophy truck racing in Baja. He was an innovator. They have the Mickey Thompson Entertainment Group. That man was involved in a lot, and it was definitely really cool to hear kind of the story from his son, and also his son Danny. He holds a land speed record, and he's an accomplished racer himself. So it was definitely just really cool to kind of hear all sides of those stories from Danny.
Yeah, and this was a guy I wasn't too familiar with. Obviously, everybody's heard of his father, right. But Danny was a great interview and such a great, personable guy, and it really got me into land speed cars again, which is something as a kid I was kind of fascinated with, and then I just kind of the land speed thing was kind of bigger in the 60s and 70s. Well, I was growing up in the 70s. There was you'd hear about it, but over the years you don't hear about it as much, and it was kind of cool to kind of get reacquainted with that a little bit and kind of what they go through. And the car he did it with was actually his father's car, and just such a great talk, and he's such a like I said, personal guy, and it was really entertaining, and I for one really enjoyed it.
Oh, absolutely. Great interview. He's a great guy. I met him over a year ago at SEMA, and actually, so this was one of the first interviews we actually did with the podcast. And kind of when we started the podcast was in May. So that's why we've kind of pushed it back several weeks, because obviously during May we want to kind of hit on a bunch of the, old Indy drivers and stuff like that. So we finally found a good time to release this one, and yeah, super excited about it. And I definitely think everyone will enjoy it.
Yeah, I do too. And I didn't realize how much racing he had done in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he talks about that quite a bit, and he talks somewhat about his father and just things in general. And it's just, this is a guy I'd like, I'm excited to meet, someday in person and get to know him. And Aaron and I are talking about going to the Salt Flats and going to actually watch him the next time he runs, tries to break land speed records. So hopefully that'll happen. And I think we will probably be there.
Yeah, and a lot of people, when people say like, oh yeah, come out and check us out and, hang out, most people are going to be like, yeah, absolutely. And, we said the same thing, but I'm 100% serious. Like, if he goes back there and run, I will actually go.
Yeah, I'm going.
As long as I'm able to go, like, I will 100% go. I'm not just saying that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm absolutely going unless something happens,
right.
that unforeseen. He definitely got me interested enough to, and he was such a, again, personal guy that.
Great guy. Yeah.
I'd like, it'd be cool to hang out there and watch them do their thing.
Absolutely. And just, I mean, I've seen Top Fuel dragsters, and I can't even imagine seeing, I mean, those, especially, I mean, you're talking about like the jet engine cars that go like, what, over 800 mile an hour. I can't even imagine that. That's just
Yeah, I
nuts.
can't. I can't either. And he was the car he had I forget how many motors. Had at least two engines, I think, or
Right.
two or four. I don't remember how many. But in the technology it takes to do that, and you know, it's not just driving a straight line. It's very technical, very
Oh,
difficult, and he gets into that a little bit, just a little bit the some of the things you kind of go through as a driver, and but yeah, it was one of those interviews. You just don't know someone until you talk to them, type of thing, and you don't know about something until you learn about it. And it was just for me again informative and interesting, and really got me excited to go watch him do his thing.
oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think without any further ado, we'll just jump right into Danny Thompson interview.
Absolutely.
Our guest today held the overall piston-driven land speed record with a speed of 448.75 mile per hour in the refurbished Challenger 2 in 2018, and is the son of legendary Mickey Thompson. Please welcome Danny Thompson. Hey, Danny, how's it going?
Good, guys. Glad to be here, and glad to be on your show.
Yeah,
Hey,
no, we
Danny.
definitely appreciate you being on, especially since we only have one episode released so far. So definitely thank you for kind of taking a chance with us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I watched your guys' first episode in there with Mr. Jones, Junior,
That's
and
right.
yeah, no, if I can help like that, I mean, I love to see this stuff like this, and especially you guys covering all aspects of racing, so that covers a wide gamut, and Bonneville is certainly at one end of that gamut.
Yeah, but then obviously your dad was involved with all different forms of racing, so that's something definitely really cool.
He did a lot, and he was not afraid to jump into anything different. So I mean, from drag racing to Indy cars to boat racing to airplanes, and yeah, he kind of had his hand in all of it.
You in doing research for this show, I because I have to sadly admit I didn't know that much about you, and I wanted to make sure I could talk fairly intelligently. I just, of course, while we're doing that, of course, I'm gonna see stuff with your father, and man, as influential as I knew that he was, I had no idea of so much of the stuff he had done, and just from even something like a Christmas tree light for drag racing. What struck me is now you said that he got interested in Bonneville as a child, just on vacation.
That's absolutely right. He went on vacation with his dad and his mother and his sister, and they stopped at Bonneville, and I got pictures of him. I think they're on my website of him standing there with his dad, and I don't know how old he was, at 7, 8, 9 years old or something, and just fascinated with it right then. And he said, I mean, how do you set a goal when you're 9 years old? But that's kind of what he
Right.
did. He wanted to go to Bonneville. He wanted to be
Yeah.
the baddest man up there, and he did make it happen.
That's had your grandfather, was he ever interested in cars or that, or was that just something that your father just, man, once he got the bug, he got the bug?
Yeah, my grandfather was a cop. And so, yeah, didn't it was, that's when, back in those days, that was in the early 50s and stuff. And, street racing was kind of problematic and stuff that, before people really started getting drag races going and that kind of stuff. So now there was no, that was just all my dad.
Wow.
He got through high school with, fixing teachers' cars and doing head jobs and stuff on cars. And my mom ended up, they weren't married yet, but she did all his homework and all that kind of stuff. And, he traded out the stuff with teachers and, got through high school, but, never went to college, never went any further education. So he was an engineering genius for sure, but he no academic training or any of that. He just had that knack, you know. And I mean, so many things for safety and, you know, drag race safety, and like you said, Christmas tree light, and, you know, I mean, to go into Indianapolis as a California hot rodder, you know, I mean, there's some pretty big steps. I mean, going 400 miles an hour in 1960 with a car him and Fritz Voigt built, you know, in his garage behind his house. So yeah, pretty amazing, man.
Yeah, anyone, I would definitely say anyone that, you know, would do like what you said. He was a hot rodder, came to Indianapolis, you know, entered in the Indy 500, a car that he built. It just takes, you know, you have to be able to take chances. And obviously, you know, the tire company and everything, it's just kind of having the entrepreneur mind and just willing to take chances.
Yeah, he did it. I mean, yeah, he did it all. And I think, you know, one of the big advantages that my dad had was he wasn't afraid to fail. So he wasn't afraid to jump in there and try something new.
Right.
He'd figure it out. You know, it might not figure it out the first time, but, you know, he would figure it out. So yeah, like I said, a pretty my hero, that's for sure.
That so in it's kind of, you kind of alluded to this a moment ago. There really is something about that generation, about just that can do, like, hey, I can make that better. Hey, I want to do that. I got to figure out how to do it, and then they just did it. I mean, like this man, like you said, he didn't have an engineering degree, but he is like tires. I mean, tires are tires to some people look like just black round objects, but
right,
to racing people, there is a lot that goes into a great tire.
Oh boy.
And just the fact that, you know, his drag racing tires and then his off-road tires were so advanced. It just says a lot. It's really pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, and I mean, when he went to the Speedway, I mean, he built his own tires for the Speedway, you know. But and like you say, the drag racing thing, and I mean, part of the big deal of the Danny Thompson off-road tires was like the side biters. So not only the traction on the bottom, but he basically put what he called side biters on the side that could grip. We were stuck in Baja and a sand wash, and I got in the car and I'm trying to drive out, and he's pushing, which didn't happen very often. Mostly I pushed, but you know, he's watching the tires spin. He's going, boy, if I put something on the side to help traction on the side, you know, that would work. So it was that mind always generating, always doing things. And I'm back at the Speedway in those days. It was so cool because people could come out and do things, build their own cars. Quinn Epperly building cars, and I mean, all these famous mechanics and stuff building stuff from scratch. You know, it's not like now where you go get a car from whoever, and if something breaks, you go to the truck and you get a new A-arm or, you know, something like that. Back then, they were inventive. My dad was one of the first persons with a rear engine car at the Speedway. You know, and here's this California hot rodder drag racer that goes to the Speedway with the engine on the wrong end. You know?
right.
It's kind of like, who is this guy? And a stock block. I mean, he went back there the first year in '62 with a Buick and Dan Gurney drove for him, you know, and they actually did really well. They broke, I think, with 10 laps to go or something, and, you know, would have been a top 10 finish first year in a whole built car. So, yeah, I mean, I'm proud of the guy, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, you should be. I mean, that's just, it's just for people who don't know, and we won't even be able to scratch the surface of what Mickey Thompson did in his life. As far as auto racing, just go do some research, and you'll see that he, many of the things you take for granted today, he was the person who came up with them or had a hand in it. But so we kind of were talking earlier about Bonneville, and you're talking about building that car, the first Challenger. Kind of let people know how that car was built.
So when I went to Bonneville, I always wanted to go to the Speedway and drive. That's all I ever wanted to do my whole life, is drive the Speedway. Well, that never happened. You know, I drove Formula Atlantic and Super V, and was fortunate enough to do fairly well in both of those, and off-road cars and all that stuff. So Bonneville wasn't that big of an interest to me, although Bonneville's what put my dad on the map and the family on the map, you know, when he went 400 miles an hour in 1960. So I wasn't allowed to race when I was young. So let me back up a little bit. I raced when I was 9 and 10 years old in quarter midgets. And then somebody got in a crash one night. My dad built Lions Drag Strip in Long Beach, California, when he was like 28 years old, and he managed it and everything. And my dad put a quarter midget track in. And so I was racing quarter midgets, and we did okay. We had a lot of fun, little kids and quarter midgets. And one night somebody got upside down and broke their leg or their back. I can't remember which way it went. And my dad was running the drag strip kind of on the other side. And somebody went running over to my dad and said, "Hey, Danny got upside down and he's hurt real bad." And so my dad came running over there and got there, and I had won the race, and I was standing there with a little trophy girl, and I had my little 2-inch trophy, and I was smiling proud. And my dad took the car away, sold it on the spot, and said, "You'll never ever race again in your life." So that was it for me. For my racing career, it was over at 10 years old. Well, when I was 18 years old and I left the house, I started racing motorcycles and that stuff. But my dad was totally against anything, and so Bonneville and all that kind of stuff was just kind of off the page. So everything I did in my early career, I did on my own with no help from my dad. I was racing Atlantic, and I'm out there on tires that had wore out, and I didn't have any help. So anyway, we did it all on our own, but finally in 1988, my dad came to me and he said, because I had a career, I was going, and things were happening, and he said, "I want to go back to Bonneville." So let me back up a little bit here so it doesn't sound so confusing. So in 1960, my dad set the record, or he didn't set the record, but he went over 400 miles an hour, first American over 400. Then in 1968 with Ford, he built the Challenger 2, or at the time it was called the Autolite Special, to go back up. And the Summers brothers had gone 409 in 1965, and so they have the official record and the fastest American and that kind of stuff. So my dad built a car in 68 with Ford to go back and get that record. Well, got it all done. And that's the same year they were up there. My dad and Danny and guys were up there with the introduction of the 1969 Ford Mach 1 Mustang. And they set over 280, was it 280 or 380? I don't remember. Anyway, a ton of records at Bonneville. Yeah. And to introduce that new Mustang. And he built this new land speed record car. And that was the Autolite Special / Challenger 2. Well, got it all, struggled with it a little bit with steering, some other issues, got it all done, and ran late in the year, and finally got the bugs sorted out and lined up on the salt, all ready to go in the morning. First thing in the morning, you want to go when there's no wind and stuff, and it rained. So that was 68. And so they were going to go back in 69. Well, in 69, Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, they all quit racing, basically, at least publicly quit racing. Said, race on, win on Sunday, sell on Monday, that's out. The bean counters kind of shut all that stuff down. So that car sat in a trailer and went in a trailer. And my dad went on to do, all the other kind of things that he did. And so that car sat, well, then whatever it was. So in 1988, my dad came to me and he said, "I want to run that car." Now, my dad and I were at odds for a lot of years because he wouldn't let me race, and I was still doing it. So there was conflict. And so he came to me and said, "I'm going to run that car again." I said, "Well, that's bitching, And he said, "Well," he said, "I'd like to have you drive it." And like right now, me just saying that, the hair stands up on my arm.
Right, sure.
And so we made a deal to drive it. And 3 months later, my dad got killed. And so that car went back in a trailer, and it was in a trailer for, another, 20 years or something. And so my wife, Valerie, we're sitting there talking, and it was kind of like, I wonder if I have that car in my shop. It's just sitting in my shop. I'm walking around it. It's 76 steps around it. And I'm walking around that car, for these years. And I'm always thinking, but I was racing other things. I drove for Chevrolet for, I think, 8 years in off-road stuff. And then I drove for Ford. And so I'm thinking, and I asked my wife, I said, I wonder if this car go 400 miles an hour, like it was built to do, but never did. And it was kind of like, I don't want to be 80 years old, sitting on the couch, wondering, I wonder if that car would have gone 400 miles an hour. So that was it. It was dropped everything, whatever it took to make it happen, and started doing it. So when we did go 448 mile an hour, two-way average in 2018, that car was 50 years old. So, it didn't have all the latest technology and traction control and that stuff.
Right.
But, we updated everything. But, yeah, it was, that was a fun project. So now we'd like to do another one. If we can find the money, we'd like to build another one and see if we can go faster.
Piston?
So what year
Piston.
was it? So what year was it that you decided that you were going to kind of take a stab at it again? Obviously, I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, 2010. Go ahead.
2010. Okay. Yeah. So it took because you guys went for it in 2016, right? Was that the first year you actually ran at Bonneville with that car?
2014 was the first year we ran. Yeah. And we ran, I mean, the very first pass on that thing, very first 5 mile an hour pass, or 5 mile pass, because that's how long the track is. We went 390, I think 392 on a 392.5 mile an hour record, but the very first pass, I mean, that thing stood up and it made it to the other end pretty quick. So, and I think the second run we ran was 419. And then we started having some issues, and, we had some engine issues and stuff like that. I mean, so we did set the record in 2016 at 406.7. Now my dad ran 406.6 in 1960. So after whatever that was, for 48 years or 46 years, we kicked his ass.
Okay, so you say you started the project again in 2010. So can you give us a little bit of idea of how much work went into it to go from 2010 to 2014? I mean, was this an everyday project, daylight to dusk, or I'm sorry, daylight to dark, working on the car, or kind of what was involved with that?
That was 7 days a week, everything we had. The first, I think, 3 years, 2.5 years, I worked on it just by myself, and there was no money. So, mm-hmm. I mean, I built a frame fixture for the thing, and I think it took 3 months later before I could afford to buy wheels for the frame fixture so I could roll it around. So it was a struggle. There was no money at first, and just me. And I built a lot of stuff in my life, because I'm a fabricator by trade. So I built Indy cars and off-road cars and all that stuff. So I had the talent to do it, but I wasn't really confident enough to go into something else that was so radically different and, just jump in there and do it. So I was struggling, trying to learn the things, and Bonneville is so much different than any other place in the world and what you do. And I mean, it's all about traction up there. And you think about the cars like this, you're running on a tire that's only 4 inches wide. That's what we ran. That's got 100 pounds of air pressure in it. So the initial spring rate, even to even get that tire to be compliant to the salt, is really hard to figure out. It's like driving on snow in the wintertime. That's how slippery it is up there. So getting traction is so it was all of these things I was trying to figure out. And then after a while, Mickey Thompson Tire came on board for some money, and I could hire somebody. I hired a guy named Frank Hanrahan, and really, really good fabricator. And then it was him and I. Then we got another guy named Lou. And anyway, we started this thing. So it took from 2010 to 2014, till we were ready to run. So I had the car, but there was nothing in it. It was a shell. And the car is the same. We basically the outside, the body, the skin, and all that stuff that Nye Frank and Tom Job built, at my dad's shop back in '68. All that was the same. New, different engine combination. We had Ford single overhead cam motors in it. That's what my dad ran in. Normally aspirated one in the front and a blowing one in the back. And then you set in between the two. Normally aspirated in the front because you couldn't put a blower on, because then you couldn't see over the top of it. So in fact, the guy was crazy. He had a throttle pedal in the thing that was split. So if he thought the rear engine was spinning versus the front engine, he would roll his foot from one side to the other, right? And that's the first thing I took out. I'm going, I'm not smart enough to work something like that, you know. But so when we went back, we put Hemis in it, and they were aluminum block Hemis, Brad Anderson block, and sill fat heads, and injected. And so I didn't want to have the horsepower difference. So my dad had 1,800 horsepower between the two engines, and we had 3,000 horsepower each. So
wow,
you know, then I was a 6,000 horsepower sandwich. That was in the end when we finally set the big record. We had that because that's when we started pouring nitro in it. And boy, that nitro stuff, it's bad. Ooh, that stuff, it's delicious, man. That makes stuff go. It shortens a fuse, but that makes stuff happen.
So you were talking about your run, and there is video on YouTube of the run from inside the car. Kind of take us through that. It looks like it got a little exciting at one point.
My son Travis, my son Valerie and Travis, or my son Travis and my wife Valerie, big supporters and big part of the crew. And Valerie ran all the people and the crew and all the guests and all that stuff. So big part of it. Travis says, "I'd like to put a camera on the steering wheel." I said, "Nah, that's silly. That won't work." And you saw the video; it was a fantastic video. But so our first run in 2018 was 446 miles an hour. And the thing got a little bit sideways when I shifted from first to second, but it wasn't too bad. So we ran 446, which was really, really good, way over the record, which was our own record at 406 for the fuel injected class. And so the second run, our engine builder, RC Catton, and we had another guy, Craig Johnson, and Rick Kurtz. And so I said, "I'd really like to run more nitro." Well, we started at 50% nitro, and we were up then at 84%. And that's when then babies they start barking. And so I said, I'd like some more nitro. Got to be nice to the engine guys, And he says, "Okay." So he gave me 3 more percent, right? You think 3%, 3% is nothing, right? 3% is massive in those, when you start running those kind of numbers. And when I left the starting line on the final run, as soon as I picked the throttle up, I says, "Oh my gosh, I got a tiger by the tail now." I mean, it was just unbelievable. And you can't get on the throttle hard because you got this 4-inch wide tire. Now it's 4-wheel drive, so we got 4 of them, but that's not not much on the ground. And but that baby took off, and she was just cooking. And we were, I think the first mile, we were 18 miles an hour faster than the day before. So the thing was scooting. And anyway, when it got into high gear, 3-speed B&J transmission, and got into high gear, shifted that thing, and everything was nice. And at 430 miles an hour, we had what we figured it ended up being is we had a 12-mile-an-hour crosswind that came across the salt. Wow. There's a big dip in the mountains, and you'll get wind that comes through that mountains, and it's usually about at the 4-mile mark, depending on where the course is laid out. And that wind came in, and that baby jumped sideways. And I'm thinking, here we are, last run, no more money. We're not coming back. This is it. And the absolute thing you do at Bonneville when the car gets sideways, you pull the parachute, because what that does is separate the center of gravity from the center of pressure and gives us some stability, and it'll straighten it out. Well, it was kind of like, I don't know how you can think like that. You're going 2.5 football fields every second. So right. You're scooting at 400 something miles an hour, and it was like, do you lift? Well, you should lift, but nah, we're not lifting. We're not going home without this record. We've been trying too hard. Anyway, the thing, it went lock to lock 3 times at 430 miles an hour, and on the 3rd time, it came back slower when it came back, and I thought, I picked the throttle back up, and the thing straightened out. We went through the traps at 459 miles an hour. So a 448 mile time and a 440 or a 450, 450 mile time. So anyway, it was a 2-way average of 448. So yeah, it was. Do you throw it away or you be stupid and leg it? So we be stupid and we legged it.
Yeah. So sorry, Scott.
I was just going to say, anybody watches that video, you can hear him start rolling the pedal a little bit. just trying to let the tires catch. And it's very impressive to watch.
It's good. It was good when it was over.
Right.
Oh, I bet. So when you're going 450 mile an hour at Bonneville, I mean, can you really tell you're going 450? Like, does 350 feel different than 450 at Bonneville? I mean, there's really no like landmarks, like you said, mountains, but it's not like going at IMS or something.
You have mile markers, and every mile you have a big sign that's 4 foot by 4 foot, and it has a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you pull the parachute at the 5. So they time you between the 2 and the 3, the 3 and the 4, and the 4 and the 5. And of course, our fastest time would be, between the 4 and the 5. But when you're going a mile every 7 seconds or something, whatever the number, yeah, you can tell because those mile markers start going. I mean, they
can't
start.
Even imagine.
They start,
yeah.
And so. Maybe from 250 to 350, a little bit, but yeah, when you're sailing on that other end, and I tell you, when that thing jumped sideways and when we got it straight and we legged it on into the end, I was a happy camper when I got to that 5 and started pulling that parachute. But we don't have like all the latest technology, and I have to take my hand off the steering wheel and shut the fuel off, because the only way you can shut those nitro motors off is by killing the fuel. The mag doesn't shut the mags off, but it doesn't do anything. So you shut the fuel off. So you got your hands on the steering wheel, take your left hand off the steering wheel at 5, push both fuels off, and then grab hold, make sure you're still going straight, and then take the other hand off and pull the parachute, and then wait for the hit. When that hit comes, it feels good, because now you're going to stop. Because I had some parachute failures at over 400 miles an hour, 440 miles an hour, and like you're waiting for that hit and it doesn't happen, and you're going, what's happening here? Well, by that time you've won a couple football fields, and it's like, oh, the parachute didn't come out, I better hit the backup. So it's totally different. Everything about racing that you learned about in sprint cars, when I drove sprint cars or off-road cars or formula cars, all that stuff, you just basically throw all that stuff out the window and start over with a clean mind and not try to figure it all out like that. So yeah, Bonneville, it's a great place. And I tell you the thing that's so cool about Bonneville, and I'm rambling on here, but when you go to Bonneville, you might be in line with somebody that's going to run, well, you have to be in the one line, you have to be able to run 175 to get in that line or the other line. But these people come up there and maybe they're a doctor, maybe they're a plumber or an electrician or whatever they are, and all year long they work for that 1 week, because Bonneville, you only get to basically run in the month of August, because like right now it's a lake. So, and this people come up with different things, like you might have the greatest idea in the world, Scott, or that you want to do this or that, or Aaron, you guys are partners and you want to do this and that. Nobody's ever done that before, and maybe it's the dumbest thing in the whole world, or maybe it's the smartest thing in the whole world, but it's your deal. And you can go run it. And so all these people, so whether you're running, for 57 mile an hour record on a 50cc motorcycle, or whether you're going, 450 on another car, it's just good people. There's no money up there. I mean, there's no money. You don't win anything. You win a trophy, and I got a black hat for the 400 mile an hour club. So, I mean, there's there's not the big corporate sponsors and all that stuff. So it's just good people going up, and they might go from 5 years, they might go 2 miles an hour faster, but they're going back up there and it's their deal. So it's pretty darn cool.
Where's the popularity of that stand right now? Because, obviously, like, I feel like back in the 60s and 70s, you used to hear a lot about Bonneville. And then there was a certain part through the 80s, and then it just feels like it's kind of tapered off. Are those people I shouldn't even say diehards, but the people who just want to go that mile an hour faster, 2 mile, are they still coming out, or?
Yeah, they're still coming out. I mean, Bonneville will get 600 entries for
okay.
Week.
That's awesome.
So usually there's 4 courses. So you have a rookie course, and then you have courses that you can't go over 175 miles an hour on. So yeah, you still have it. most of us up there are pretty ancient, and we'd like to see some new blood come in. But you can run anything you want. There's so many classes. I mean, you want to go up on a motorcycle, you want to run. I mean, there's motorcycles that have gone 400, and I think the record is 376 miles an hour on a motorcycle, streamlined motorcycle. So, or if you want to run your 50cc motor, and go 55 miles an hour. So there's so many. You cannot be imaginative enough to come up there. I mean, there's so many classes and so many things. And like I said, the people are good people. So to answer your question, the popularity in the 60s, like when my dad ran and Craig Breedlove ran and the Summers brothers and Al Teague and these guys. So those days were probably more the heyday of it. But like I said, they still get, they'll get us 600 entries up there on a big Bonneville Speedway deal. So, but there's great. Also, now there's so we ran in 2014 and we came back in 2015, a year to get everything ready, all up there, get up there, the whole crew's there. We're sitting there at dinner the night before everything, starts. And all of a sudden hear this pitter patter, pitter patter, pitter patter. And then the rain just comes down. We didn't get to run Bonneville for almost 500 days because it rained and it turned it into a lake. So if you imagine, to kind of give you an example, if sitting at a table, if you take a bottle of water on a flat table and pour it on there, that one bottle of water will take that whole table up. Mm-hmm. That's like Bonneville is. It's so flat up there, you can see the curvature of the earth. So a little bit of rain it'll flood the whole thing, and you'll be out for a year. And we waited for a whole year before we ran again. Or it can rain 4 inches and the wind will blow like heck. And the place is so flat, it'll blow all the water to the other end and you can run the next day. So it can be, you can't control that part. Mother Nature's got way more horsepower than all of us. She doesn't want you to run, you're done,
So you were talking about all different types of people, Dennis and whatever running at Bonneville. So is there any type of qualifications you have to enter a car, or could someone like Scott just show up with a car and run?
You can just show up and run as long as whatever class that you've entered, as long as you pass the technical, go through scrutineering and all that. And anybody can run. So now you can't go fast at first. You have to have licensing passes. So you have to go, and I can't remember what they are, 125, 150, 175. And they have a D license, a C license, and AA license. I think you can go, I think I'm AA, but anyway, over 350 or something like that. So you gotta pass each one, and then you have to go to what's his name, Lee Kennedy, and he has to sign off and say So you take your timing slip, and they say and you didn't spin. Now if you spin, then you start over again. So and it's easy to spin up there. Like I said, it's like driving on snow. So Scott, one of those midgets or sprint cars or something. Who was running up there last year?
Damien Gardner had one.
Damien Gardner went up there and
they built it
pretty fast, but he spun a bunch of times.
Yeah, well,
you know how good he is at going sideways.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is I believe, and I haven't talked to Damien about this, so I could be wrong. But I believe what was happening was packing air underneath the tail.
Yeah,
it was making it stand up.
Making the tail stand up.
I forget how fast he was trying to go, but they would get to a certain point and then it'd start picking the rear tires up.
Yeah. So I drove a Mustang for Ford and Brent Hike in, what year was it? I don't know, 2011 or something like that, before I started doing the Challenger 2 project. And I didn't know anything about aerodynamics or any of that stuff. And didn't know anything about center pressure versus center of gravity. And so I was in a Mustang and 264 miles an hour and over the record. And the same thing happened. Tail lifted up. That thing leaped sideways. It went 25 feet in the air. It flew 1,100 feet and rolled 6 times. And it was, it was one of those, there's in-car video of that thing too on YouTube under Danny Thompson or Thompson LSR, and it shows the thing. My helmet, the visor's opening and closing, and you're seeing ground air. I think it went through the 5 mile. I think it flew at the 4 mile and went through the 5 mile upside down on the roof at 248. So yeah, the place can bite you too. You know, when you think that's once again, you think the thing got sideways. And I said, that's okay. I've driven sprint cars, you know, I've driven all
Right.
this different stuff. I'm an off-road guy. Sideways is good. I love sideways. Nah, not good.
What
So, didn't hurt me, so I was lucky, but it threw the car away.
what so I mean, it's such a violent, I mean, obviously such a violent crash. Um did you have any type of injuries or concussion or
Nothing.
anything?
Nothing. Everything.
Wow.
Everything.
Wow.
I had a couple holes in my leg where some, you know, little pieces went through it, just small. But no, I got out. You know, they put me in the ambulance, and you know, they asked me all the typical questions. You know, who's the president? And, you know, how are you? And you know, all that stuff. And you're going, I'm good. And but I drove the truck and trailer and all the stuff home the next day. So the car was junk. It was a throwaway. So Brent put it in his museum. I think it's laying in there upside down.
Do you didn't even have the red eye, huh?
No, I didn't have red eye or anything, and it I think we had a, you know, what kind of computer system, I can't remember what we had in there, but I think it saw some ungodly number like 62 G's or something.
Oh, wow.
But
Wow.
I was black and blue and I was sore for sure.
I
But yeah,
bet.
it didn't have the red eye. It didn't violently flip like a sprint car does, you know, but
Okay.
it was doing these slow rolls in the air. And if you watch the video on it, you can see, you know, I mean, it all happened fast for sure, but not violent like a sprint car does. So they hurt you.
Yeah. That it's funny you were talking about the ask you all those questions. I was at Salem with Critter Malone, which is Shim Malone's son, you know, and I used to go help him, and he crashed one time at Salem. It was a hard one, and he's kind of knocked woozy, and they started asking those questions, and this guy asked me like, "Are you know, do pink cows have purple calves or something like that?" And Critter goes, "Man, I don't know where you come from, but where I come from, no." So I always thought that was funny.
Yeah, that's funny stuff. So yeah.
But that's so you said that you've run other things and done a lot of other things. What I did see where you ran the truck series or the off-road trucks for a while too. Do you do the desert racing and all that as well later in years, or?
I did the desert racing earlier in my years with my dad. Now he wouldn't let me drive, but he let
Right.
me ride. You know, so I rode with him for a number of years until you know, I just I didn't want to ride anymore. I wanted to drive. So I did that, and I ran the stadium series, the indoor stuff that my dad promoted for the Mickey Thompson Entertainment Group. I drove for Chevrolet for a number of years and had my own team and that stuff. So yeah, I drove. Yeah, I like stadium stuff a little bit better than the desert. I like the desert too, but the stadium stuff, I like that, you know, get after it, make it happen
Right.
right now, you know. And I mean, we'd start with, I mean, we go to the races with 4 sets of body work, you know. And, you know, I mean, it was pretty violent, but really, really fun. I mean, my dad, you know, it's another thing my dad started, you know. So we were, so can I tell another quick story?
Man, you tell as many
Yep.
stories you want.
What you want?
So we're racing in Baja, and my dad and Parnelli Jones are pretty big rivals, and you all know how bad Parnelli is. I mean, he's a bad, fast man, and so they start behind. I think Parnelli started 3 minutes behind us, and so they had a bet, a $500 bet, who would make it to Camaloo first. Well, Camaloo was, if I remember the numbers right, about 125 miles down the Baja Peninsula, but at that time, that first 125 miles was on the asphalt. So they had this bet. So we start the race. We're in a pickup truck. He's in the big Ole Bronco, which is, you know, a bad machine. And so we start the race with 4 drag slicks, right? Because my dad's going to go on the asphalt. Anyway, we beat him down there, and we beat him to the Camaloo, and so we changed tires, put 4 dirt tires on it, and we're smoking it down through, coming down into El Rosario, and there's this big long canyon. Parnelli hadn't caught us yet, you know, so we're pretty happy. And then all of a sudden, bam, he hits us from the back. My dad says, "Where is he? Where is he?" I said, "What do you mean, where is he? He just hit us." And so he says, "Take your seatbelts off. Look where he is. Look where he is." So I got my shoulder harnesses off, and I'm looking backwards, and I'm doing the color play-by-play commentary to my dad. "He's on the right. He's on the left. He's trying to pass us." And I says, "He's passing us on the right. No, he's upside down." And he's sliding on the side, hits another rock, bounces back up on the wheels, and passes us. And just leaves us, right? So now my dad's driving really terrible, going, "What's wrong? Pay attention. We're running off the road. We're hitting stuff. Oh, come on, let's go get it together." And he says, "People have got to see what just happened. People have to see what just happened." And I'm going, "Just drive the race, just keep on the road." But what that was a start of short course racing. And my dad took the chunk of Baja and brought it into the stadiums. And we'd come in and we'd bring 25 million pounds of dirt and put it in the LA Coliseum or, different stadiums. And then we'd bring the trucks in, and then people could sit down and they could watch 18 separate races in a 3-hour period, get up between each race with, my dad did what the attention span of the average person was 8 to 10 minutes. Those races were all 8 to 10 minutes. Then you could get up, you grab a beer, a soda, a hot dog, and a Coke or whatever, and then come back and sit down and watch another race. 6 different classes, 18 races in 3 hours. So it was just, the guy was always thinking, but because of that race with Parnelli was so aggressive and so good, he wanted people to see it. And so then that's when we started short course racing. So
that, as a kid, I loved watching the Mickey Thompson Off-Road Series on TV. Man, I just loved it. And then, a lot of people don't realize Jimmy Johnson got his start running that, right?
Jimmy Johnson, yeah, he had the Chevrolet ride. I had the Chevrolet ride for those years, and then I left and went to run the company. Jimmy came in, and I ran the company for a couple of years there, and it was funny because we put this big Chevrolet was his guy, and he was a rookie. I mean, the kid was like 6 or 7 years old and came in and just nailed it. And he was a young man anyway, 16 or something. And I put these big Chevrolet signs up, and we had Jimmy Johnson and Ricky Johnson, the motorcycle rider. They were coming into the stadium for the opening ceremonies, and we had this big sign, and Jimmy was supposed to like crash through this Chevrolet sign, and come into the stadium off this big jump. The guy jumped so far, so high, he went over the top of the stage and landed way at the bottom. It was just like, the guy, I call him a kid. He's not a kid anymore, but amazing right from when he was really young, and his dad was there working for B.F. Goodrich, so he could be there right next to Jimmy all the time. And so that's where Jimmy got to start. So pretty amazing.
And everybody got to, the world got to know Robbie Gordon.
Robbie's Robbie, and
that's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And just an amazing, can drive anything, anytime. But Robbie and I had a hell of a race, right? I think it was his very first race, Anaheim. I think I was lucky enough to sit in the pole. And then was it the main event? I think it was a main event. No, it was a heat race. And anyway, I was leading, and somebody else was leading. The Mazda was leading, and he got upside down. I hit him, and it knocked the hood up over the top of my. I couldn't see. The hood folded up over what would be the windscreen, and we ran, I think, 6 laps in the lead with the hood up, looking out the side. And then Robbie passed us and went on and won the race. And that was kind of the start of his, he had raced buggies and stuff. But that was the start when he really, really, really got the start. And that kind of really kick-started his career. But the guy could drive anything and drive it fast, and still does. And now his kid ran last week, I think, down in Florida. And I forget how old he is, Max. But he's like 12 or 13 years old, something, yeah. And went out and actually ran pretty good. Robbie ran behind him for a few laps and then passed him. But so there's some pretty big, Jeff Ward, the Supercross rider, ran in there. Ricky Johnson, Ricky was, he was awesome in anything he drove. So Ivan Stewart, of course, that's got nominated into the Motorsports Hall of Fame America. for this year. So yeah, some the Millens, both Rob and Steve. So yeah, some heavy Walker Evans. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, big
Mears.
time. Yeah,
The Mears.
Mears. I mean, Roger and
Yeah.
Rick. I mean, Rick won the Coliseum in '79,
Yeah.
right after he won the Indy 500 for the first time. So yeah, both the Mears, and I think Mears, Roger is probably my favorite all-time, off-road rider. Rob McCachran, so yeah, some heavy hitters came out of there.
I met Roger. He was driving for Grant King. My dad worked for Grant, and around '81, I met him a couple of times. He ran fifth at Mid Ohio, driving for Grant.
Yeah. Was that in the machinist car?
No, it was before that.
It was
I forget. It was just a Kingfish, blue, one of Grant's cars. It was before ground effects had really totally taken over. And, no, Roger was a good dude. I remember I walked in a trailer and, of course, back then it's just an old enclosed trailer, and Rick's laying on the floor, and he and Roger are sharing, different stories about, different parts of the track and how to get through it. I was about 10 at the time, but it was really neat to see, just good guys.
Yeah, good guys for sure. I mean, look, that's what Rick started, he was doing that off-road stuff and running Ascot and off-road cars. And I think if I remember the story right, Rick met Roger Penske on the Colorado 500 motorcycle ride.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I think Rick was driving. I think he drove for Simpson.
Yeah, he drove that car, that pink car. Wasn't that pink or something like that? A pink car for Bill.
Yeah. So look where he went, and he's still involved, and it's nice to see him out there.
Oh yeah.
Not racing, but coaching.
Did you? There's a great thing on YouTube of I believe it's on YouTube of Rick taking Jimmy Johnson around the speedway in a rental car.
It's on YouTube.
I said rental car. It was like a Corvette or something.
It was a pace car, the Brickyard, I think.
And they're, Rick's showing him his line and all that. And Rick is giving a master class on getting around the speed.
Yeah. Too bad Jimmy's not running the speedway. I would have liked to have seen that, but just running the road race courses. But
I think he's going to, because I was hearing he's going to do it in 2022. And I guess if he wanted to do it this year, I'm sure there would be a car become available pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, he's got that car. They gave it to
Kanan.
Yeah.
Kanan, yeah.
So he was running fairly quick there on Saturday. Kanan was in that thing. So, but TK's mighty fast on those ovals.
Oh yeah. Boy, you give him a sniff at this year's 500. Man, if he gets a sniff at it, he's gonna be hard to beat.
Yeah, agreed.
He wants it bad.
Yep.
I think the whole team's going to be hard to beat. Just look at Palou. Rookie and not rookie, but his first year with it was second year in IndyCar, first year with Chip, and winning your first race.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
So you said that you had really wanted to run Indianapolis, and what was the allure of Indianapolis for you? Because it's not, and I understand the allure of Indianapolis, but from your background, it's a little different, that you come more from the drag racing and the more of straight line speed world.
So, I can remember, before it was even televised, listening to it on the radio with my dad and my mom and listen to those voices and, neighbors sing, and, when Jim Neighbors sang the deal back home in Indiana. It's just all of those things. That's all I wanted to do in life. And I got pretty close, but my dad, those doors that were just barely open, when I won the Atlantic Championship for SCTA in SoCal. And so the doors were just opened, and I found out a lot later that my dad had closed those doors and didn't let it happen because he didn't want me to get hurt. At the Speedway. He had some, some big issues there in the 60s at the Speedway. So, that was it. And unfortunately, as hard as I tried, the opportunity never happened.
So when your dad was at Indy, were you ever there with him?
I was little, so,
right.
I was too small. you guys both have been around the Speedway enough. You know how when you're a worker, you don't have time for anything else. I mean, when I worked for Danny Thompson for a number of years, and for Interscope Racing, and we called it. Phil Casey was the crew chief, and we called it the 90 Days of May. Because that's how hard you worked. So
yeah, that's and people, I think the general people listening, especially younger people listening, probably don't understand why your dad was so against you racing. But Aaron and I had this conversation the other day, and people today don't. I mean, you see 14-year-olds in sprint cars. Well,
yep.
a 14, 15-year-old kid in a sprint car when I was a kid, I mean, that was, you would be looked at, if you had your kid in a sprint car at that age, you would be looked at pretty crazy. Yeah. And your dad grew up and had a different time where, I mean, these race cars, it's sad to say, they took people's lives on a regular basis.
Yep.
And
my dad lost Dave McDonald.
Sure, yeah.
So, I mean, it was that those things always stuck in my head. But, I mean, when Al Jr. started driving sprint cars, I mean, the guy was sitting on pillows, and he was one of the young guys. He was probably the guy that started that young thing. But, I mean, other guys that were at the Speedway and stuff and winning the Speedway and stuff, I mean, how old was Bobby? God bless him. When he started, was he like 28 or something the first year he was at the Speedway? So I don't know the exact, but somewhere back in there. So you didn't start young in those days.
And what's crazy about that is, again, another Parnelli story. And I didn't even realize this till I heard Bobby telling it, that Bobby didn't think he was good enough to run the Speedway. Didn't think he had what it took. And Parnelli convinced him to come back, and he convinced him to go talk to Grant Telly. Then he went down and had a face-to-face with Harlan Fangler and made sure that he understood Bobby was going to take his rookie test, and because Parnelli believed in him that much.
Yeah, good for PJ. I mean, thank you, PJ, for that.
Right.
Because what a character, what an icon in that industry.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you could talk to the guy, and when you left talking to the guy, you just be smiling, So, and him up in the booth. I mean, as much as he did in the Speedway, when he went in the booth, I loved it when he was up there. So sorry, sad day. But anyway.
It is. It really truly is, and boy, we lost a great one today. I mean, that's for sure. So you said that I didn't realize you'd run some sprint cars in that.
Yep. I run CRA stuff. So I only ran about 6 months. I was doing off-road stuff, but we certainly didn't set the world on fire. I mean, we were running against Dean Thompson and Bubby and those guys. So I was a rookie, and I got hurt in Mexico, and so that kind of ended my sprint car deal. I got of all things, I ate some bad food, and it almost killed me. I spent 17 days in trauma, trying to get well. But that was during my rookie season. Then I went on to other things. So, but I enjoy the CRA stuff. So, Jeff Haywood was running, and there was a lot of. I mean, Dean and Bubby. I mean, holy smokes,
Well, yeah. I mean, old Bub, man. There's another guy. Again, the guy I was lucky enough when I had my shop. Bub would come in, and we had CNC stuff at the time, and he would say, "Man, I'd just like to make this. I'd just like to make it a little different. This is how I'd like it." And there are definitely Justin Grant is his son-in-law, and I know that they do things a little. I don't know what they do, but they know they do things a little different. And kind of Bubby has kind of his little guys who that he worked with, that they have their ways of setting the cars up, and it's pretty. It's not funny, but it's funny. Like these guys just, I mean, whatever Bub said, that's what goes.
Yeah. Well, that's respect.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's you were talking about even something earlier about your dad, and do you think that motorsports today? Do you think it would even interesting because it would be maybe the land speed stuff, but with how it's become so. You buy stuff off the shelf and it comes from manufacturers and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of why my dad went into the off-road deal. because the off-road deal's completely open. And you look at, fabricators and stuff nowadays, the off-road guys, and I'm not involved, with that too much anymore. I went and ran the Bio 1000 a few years ago with Reed Rutherford, a guy here in Colorado, and we were fortunate to win our class. And I had never won the 1,000 before, so that was pretty cool. But you look at the things that these guys are doing in off-road and the engineering, and I mean, these guys got 36, 40 inches of wheel travel, and the thing turns. And I mean, it's in the shock absorber. And I mean, that's why my dad kind of went into that deal, because it was open. There wasn't any restrictions. It wasn't like when my dad went to the Speedway, he had a lot of problems with USAC. He brought that wide oval tire, and my dad had the patent on the wide oval tire. I mean, so he brought different things in. But when they started restricting him for all those things, I mean, he had ground effects in his 64 car. It might have been ground defects, at the time, because it wasn't developed. But and so he was always thinking, and he was always had his hands tied behind his back so many times. So that's why he really liked the off-road deal. And all of our cars were really radical, and most of the time they didn't get to the end, but they were certainly the fastest to checkpoint one.
Right. I was talking to, we were talking about Parnelli, and I asked him one time, I said, with today, the way sport is today, would you like leased engines, that sort of thing? Because then you have know kind of what your budget is. Your leased engine in your car. And he goes, no. He said, nah. He said, for me, I raced in what I consider the greatest period of auto racing.
Yep.
And he goes, because I loved it being open. And that's my dad, who was a chief mechanic back in, in the 70s and late 60s and 70s. And he's the same way. A lot of those guys, this type of racing just doesn't even excite them, like spec type racing. And,
I definitely feel like back in that time, it was a lot better for, the innovators, people like Mickey Thompson. Sure. They could really, kind of use their imagination and basically do whatever they want. I mean, if you look at all the cars that Mickey brought to the Indy 500, I think my favorite was I think it's called the roller skate car. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my favorite too. I have that car. It's sitting in my shop, just
about
100 feet from us. That's my favorite car of all of the cars that my dad built. And this one's all titanium. When my dad went to the Speedway with that car, so it had full body work, the fenders were covered, it had 12-inch wheels and tires. It was so ahead of its time. And the Speedway just, killed him on everything. I mean, they took the tires away from him. They put 15-inch tires on. Then the thing looked like a praying mantis, going down the deal. And then, he's still trying to run it, but, you're not doing good and you're getting criticized. And I mean, that's when he had Sears build tires for him. His because Goodyear and Firestone wouldn't build them. And then, then they took all that stuff away from him. So I think, you had the Clint Epperleys in and the Grant Kings in, and you had all these guys that built their own cars and came to the Speedway. They didn't go to the truck and buy the parts,
Right.
So I think it was the greatest era, and certainly Speedway racing. Yeah. And I'm a big single open wheel fan, huge open wheel fan. But now, I don't know. And everybody crashing on the first lap, I'm a little tired of it. I don't want to see crashing. I hate crashing. I want to see racing,
I'm the same way. Yeah, that's a big thing with me too. I hate to see guys crash, especially early, because it destroys the race. And I get it. I get it from both sides. I understand why they're spec racing, because the cost, especially in the kart days, the costs were pretty intense.
Yeah.
And we don't have cigarette money today to finance a lot of that. I get it, but at the same time, it does lose something. And you were talking about as a kid listening on the radio, and certainly when I was a kid too, certain cars kind of had a life of their own. And like even before me, like a team, like say even Agajani's car, Old Calhoun, or people, there were some fans that just loved that. And today you can't, you take all the vinyl off them, they all look exactly the same.
Yeah, well, that's it. You can't, I mean, it's like cup racing, You
Right.
take the vinyl off, and what's the difference between a Chevrolet or a Ford or, a Toyota? So I don't know. I guess I'm 71 years old now, so I'm a little bit old school. So, but still want to go fast. Still want to build another car. Still want to try to go, break the existing records.
So what's your goal at the land speed? Where do you want to push it to?
I wanna build a new car of my own, my own design. I have Tim Gibson as my aero engineer and mechanical engineer, and he was on C2, Challenger 2 too. So yeah, I'd like to build a new car. Nobody's gone over 500 yet with a piston powered car. So my goal would be certainly to beat our record. We still hold the record in A fuel at 448. George Poteet went faster than us last year in the blowing class. We're injected, he's blowing. So he set a record in that class. So we have our record. He has his, but his is faster than ours. So and there isn't any overall record. It's not classified that, it's classified as classes. So but he's the bad man now. So yeah, I'd like to build a new car. We're trying to put sponsorship packages, partnership packages together now. And we already have the initial design kind of figured out, just on scratch paper. Tim Gibson and I talk every couple of weeks on new ideas and what we're going to do. So yeah, we're looking for sponsors and trying to come up with that. And it'd be nice to be the first piston car over 500. I don't know if that's possible. I mean, every 10 miles an hour. I think to go, so kind of an example. So we went 450. If you wanted to go 550, and I don't know if that's possible in a piston powered car with the distance and everything we have, but Gibson ran the numbers, and to go 100 miles an hour faster, it takes 82% more horsepower.
It's a lot more horsepower.
Piece of plywood keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger that you're trying to push through the air. So
right.
And once again, it's all about traction, and it's all about Mother Nature. Is she going to be nice to you? Is the salt going to be good this year? Is it going to be rough? I mean, and we ran 435 in 2017, and when I went by the 3 mile mark, it was so rough. The mile marker, as I mentioned earlier, 4 feet by 4 feet with a 2, 3, 4. When I went by the 3, I couldn't see what the sign said. It was shaking that hard. So we were still managed to run 435, but we put 6 rods out the side of the front motor on the return run. So, but yeah, so you got. There's things at Bonneville you can't control, the weather being, the weather and traction being the biggest part of it. So it's certainly a big ask to go. I think there's only been 12 people ever to go over 400 mile an hour with a record in a piston powered car. So, you got the Altigues and the Poteets and one of my heroes, Altigue, so Summers Brothers, my dad. So it's it's not easy, but I'd sure like to. 71. I got some laps left. So I mean, I train every day. I'm ready. I want one more go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What type of training? What do you think is the best type of training for that?
It's just me, just to stay in shape. I have that competitive attitude, and I don't want to get beat. I ski a lot in the wintertime, up here in Colorado. And, hell, I'm the best skier there is on the whole mountain going up the chairlift. I don't run out of talent till I get to the top, So, but no, I just like to do that. And, so I train 7 days a week. My wife is really, really in shape. And like I'll be kind of moaning and groaning about hurting, broken back, broken neck, all this different stuff. And she says, "Why are you sitting there? Why aren't you up moving? Why aren't you doing, so she keeps me motivated. And so I don't, for Bonneville's not so specific like, maybe Indy cars or F1 or that kind of stuff. You don't have to be in that kind of shape, but the better shape you're in, the better everything works. The better your brain works, the better everything works. So,
and I would imagine like reaction time, it would be a big thing with that too, right? Because something goes wrong, it probably goes wrong pretty quickly and fast.
Yeah, when you're going 2.5 football fills a second, Yeah, you better you better be as quick as you can anyway. So yeah, so I think, staying in shape, right now, ski season was over 2 weeks ago, so now it's, back to, we just work. We don't go to the gym with other people or any of that kind of stuff. We're way up here in the mountains, and down a dirt road, and so 8 miles of dirt road if you come from the back way to get to us. So yeah, but I got my shop up here and all my stuff and all my fab equipment and that stuff. So now if we build another car, we'll go back down to LA, because there's a lot of really good skiers up here and mountain climbers, but nobody can weld very well.
What now that was something I was going to ask you earlier, and I kind of forgot. When you get done with a weekend of runs, does the car have a lot of, like, the frame to have a lot of twist or that sort of thing?
The biggest problem is the salt. The salt just eats it. I mean, it'll eat the car. It'll eat the car in two in a couple of years. So, running, a fuel motor, you got to go through the bottom end. You got to pull the bearings, look at the bearings every run, and that kind of stuff. So maintenance is high. I mean, we use, so we got to change after one run. We got to change oil in both engines. So that's 10 gallons of oil. We use almost 50 gallons of fuel to go 5 miles. So the economy isn't too good. But if you have the money and the people and everything, you should take it completely apart down to bare frame from year to year, so you can clean everything up. But the salt gets places that you can't get to. I mean, because it turns to water inside. There's so much water coming off the tires and everything. It gets everywhere. So all the electrical connections and all of the different things, fuel, and it's tremendous maintenance deal. You get to run one time or maybe 2 times if you're lucky a year. And if you get rained out, then you got to wait a year. So yeah, it's a different animal. Like I said, you got to throw everything that you know about racing out the window to go do the Bonneville deal.
So it's only
and
August.
I can still do it when you're old. You can still do it.
Right. So it's only. No, I mean, obviously you proved you can. I mean, how old were you when you broke the record?
68.
Yeah, 68. No, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Man, that's just amazing stuff. That is just that raw speed.
Yeah.
Man, just trying to catch that raw speed. It's hard to do, right? I mean, it all seems really simple, but boy, it gets really complicated.
It gets really complicated, and like I said, it's so different and everything. But yeah, it's I mean, if you ever get a chance to go to Bonneville, I mean, it's a bucket list thing, but it's just, you go there and you get addicted. You just keep coming back. I mean, there's guys up there, and girls that are running that are old. There's one lady on a motorcycle that runs up there, and she's got records. I think she's close to 80 years old. So yeah. You need to go to Bonneville.
I'm going to Bonneville. I'm going.
Yeah, no, I've always wanted to go.
It's something that it's so much. Yeah.
So is it? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but so is it open to the public, like during the speed weeks, or how does that work? Anyone can go? Just
show up and pay your money, and I think it's a pretty big hit if you stay for a whole week. I think it's $40 for the pit passes for all week. So it's, and like I said, you can. And the thing that's so cool about Bonneville is you can go in anybody's pit. All right. Nobody cares. You just go in their pit, and rather than kick you out for taking pictures or something, more than likely, they're going to offer you a soda and make you a sandwich and hand you a wrench. You're going to be on the team. And I mean, you can go up there and come in somebody's pit and actually work for them all week. These aren't professional, big professional teams. And these are just guys up there racing. And so it's, yeah, you can just go, show up. You want to go like Speed Week, I think it starts, my wife and I were just looking at it. I think it starts the 7th of August this year. And the first 2 days are the biggest. And that's when usually the big numbers get laid down the first couple of days. But they race all week. And so you do a run. If you break a record, that means you qualify. You go back to impound. You got 4 hours to work on your car and prep it for the next morning. And then you get to make your return run the next morning. So you have to beat the existing record by, whatever it is, 1% or something. So you got 4 hours to get it all together and go again the next morning. You got 7 o'clock in the morning, and go. So, and like I said, anybody's pit, you can just walk in, say hi, and you're part of the team. It's cool. It's really cool. You don't get kicked out, for, how fussy or how hard is it to get in a Winston Cup, or excuse me, Winston Cup.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself. A cup pit, or get in the IndyCar garage. You got to have a lot of suction to get in those places.
So who owns, and this may be a crazy question, but I don't know, like who owns the the salt flats, like who puts it on, or like, I guess who gets the money for it?
So the BLM owns it, Bureau of Land Management, and so the sanctioning body, which there's two different sanctioning bodies at Bonneville, it's SCTA, Bonneville Nationals, and then there's the Utah Salt Flat Racing. So they rent the salt from,
Gotcha.
but they don't make any money. I think there's maybe 2 paid people, and everybody's volunteer. They come up there, they take a week off, a week's vacation, and go up there and work their tails off in 110-degree sun all day long. And so, so SCTA, Southern California Timing Association, runs Bonneville Speed Week, and then Utah Salt Flat Racing Association runs their own races called World of Speed. So SCTA runs Speed Week in August, and then they have a final event in the end of September, which is like a 3-day meet. So, which is cooler. You make a lot more horsepower at that time of the year that you do during Speed Week when it's so hot. You're sitting on the start line bolted in that car in 110 degrees with 15% humidity. Definitely will melt you down.
I was watching something once about. No, I definitely want to go. Me and my dad were talking about that. Actually, that the one year I met you at SEMA, which was 2019. Last year's kind of got me messed up on the times, but yeah, it was 2019. We were looking to see how far the salt flats were from Vegas, and I forget the exact distance, but it was pretty far. So we were thinking about, going there. Obviously they wouldn't be running them, but it would just be cool just to see it. And I don't drive? So can you drive like out on the salt flats?
Yeah, it's not encouraged because you get people out there doing donuts and
Oh, I bet.
Kind of
trying to break their own records.
Tearing the salt up, and they get out there and get stuck, and you can get out there and get lost. I mean, I've been lost out there, and I've been there for years. But it's 98 miles or 100 miles from Salt Lake City down I-80, and from Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is about 5 hours, 4.5 hours from Vegas. So yeah, but you can, fly into Salt Lake City, rent a car, go out there, wash the car before you take it back to the rental agency, get the salt off of it, cover the floor with the plastic so the salt's not in there, because they'll charge you a $1,000 cleanup fee if you bring it back dirty, full of salt.
Oh, sounds like you have experience with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We take our own cars there, and so yeah.
Right.
The place is just bitching. So.
Well, and the great part about it, like you said earlier, it's Mother Nature, right? It's just a wonder of the world, and you are able to adapt it to something that's extremely cool.
Yeah. And I think the first records were set there in 1914.
Wow.
Yeah, the place is yeah. Gotta go, guys. You got to go there.
I'm going.
I definitely want to go.
Come if we get sponsorship and build another car, come up when we run. Hang out with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
That'd be awesome.
This is it. That's it right there.
Just on the flats.
So if can you see the car from there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So 36 inches wide, 32 feet long, 24 inches in the front. 2 engines, 6,000 horsepower, 4-wheel drive. So, and that car was designed by Ford and my dad in 1968, and went 450 miles an hour in 2018. So, you can take old cars, new cars, in between cars, any cars.
Now, was Ford a part of any of that run at all when you went back, since they helped design it, or they weren't interested in doing anything?
They weren't. I tried to get them, I mean, the history, and they have a pretty big history in motorsports, but yeah, Ford didn't. I went to Ford. I mean, probably 3,000 proposals. I started
Wow.
before 2010. I had been trying to sell the project, but it was selling air, and people are going, "Yeah, you're going to take a car that's that old and go up there and try to get a record? Impossible. It can't be done." So, trying to find any sponsorship, and we don't have television. We don't have spectators. We don't particularly have hospitality. The three things, as you guys well know, that motorsports kind of thrives on. We didn't have any of that, so you couldn't sell that part of the project. You gotta find a sponsor that's as involved as you are, and that wants to be involved, and then create your own system to promote it and promote them. And that just doesn't happen in Bonneville. So that's just the
It's
way it is.
probably on one hand a good thing because you keep a lot of that corporate out, and say you get into a Ford Chevy Toyota battle, and all of a sudden now they got giant haulers and engineers, and
Yep. Yeah,
then
and you're exactly right. I mean,
yeah,
that's the way the godfathers of the salt. That's the way they feel. They don't want big sponsors to come in.
yeah.
There's no money. I mean, I got a little black hat that says I'm a member of the 400 mile an hour club, and I got a trophy, and
Hmm.
But
that was
that
the most
means
expensive hat I ever had in my life.
that hat and trophy though. I'm sure there are a lot of things from this sport in your years in the sport that mean a lot, but boy,
Right.
those
Priceless.
people couldn't buy them from you, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
just and that's kind of what it
So
is,
yeah, I sold that car last year, and at Mecum auction, and was just a heartbreaker to do it. But it cost us everything we had to do that, and we sold that car, and we certainly didn't make any money. But we don't owe anybody any money, and we have a record. So I don't have a car, but that's all right. We're
That
all
is
good.
that's a classic racing story right there. That
It's typical. It's
Yep.
typical. So yeah.
the old
So
how'd you make $1 million in racing? Well, I started with 5, but
yep, exactly. That's the story.
listened to the one earlier and with Jagger and
Yeah.
we typically like to ask we try to give you the person we're speaking with a chance to talk about somebody in auto racing that maybe that someone like your father who's such a giant influence to you, or maybe there's someone else that you just don't that maybe other people don't know is a huge influence to you. I mean, is there anybody like that? I mean, of course, your father is such a looming figure. We
Yeah.
understand that, but
Yeah, that's a good question, and we could go for another 2 hours with a list of people, that are my heroes, and Danny Angaius is one of my absolute biggest heroes. Fast in everything he ever drove, and so Angaius, I mean, Parnelli, Mario, I mean Al Teague, Summers brothers, and Bonneville stuff, and uh, I mean Bobby, who we just lost on Sunday. I mean, and I got so much respect for all those guys. I mean, Mario, huge. I mean, Schumacher. I mean, both Schumacher and drag racing and Schumacher and F1 racing.
right.
I mean, yeah. So besides my dad, probably couldn't. I mean, Parnelli. I mean, Parnelli's huge to me. So yeah, I don't know. I couldn't pinpoint that beyond my dad, but yeah, just there's a ton. I got so much respect for, so many people. Yeah, I got a lot of heroes.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure, and you got to be around them and
Yeah.
get to know these people, and like you were mentioning, Danny and Gaius, and I've met Danny a couple times, but from all accounts, one of the nicest human beings who's ever lived. I mean,
Yeah,
for what
yeah,
I've gathered, and that's great. I mean, I love to hear somebody, I love to hear a nice thing about like Danny or
yeah,
these guys are kind of getting a little lost to time, and it's kind of a shame, but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
nice to hear.
Part of the deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're losing so many of them here, lately. I
Oh
mean, it's
yeah,
all
absolutely.
those guys are in their 80s and 90s, and it's going to happen. And you're sad, but but you're also, thankful for what they gave the industry,
Mm-hmm.
what they gave us in pleasure, and
Absolutely.
that stuff. So yeah.
And we just interviewed Flynn Lazier last week, and obviously Buddy Lazier's son, and then the grandson of Bob Lazier, and obviously Bob passed away from COVID, and it was just amazing just hearing from Flynn. It's kind of like, with Mickey, Bob was really kind of the driving force behind the whole racing dynasty with the Laziers. And he just, as Flynn said, he just did so much really for the sport and then for their family.
Yeah, no. And there's 1,000 stories like that. So it's, I certainly couldn't pinpoint that, but yeah.
Did you know, now you may or may not, he's originally from California. Did you know Steve Stapp, who built sprint cars, and he and Pancho Carter were so successful in the 70s and that?
Yeah. No, I didn't know. I know the name, but yeah, no, I didn't know him.
I went to his memorial yesterday over at USAC, and
and
it was sad. I mean, it was there was a couple hundred people there, and it was a great celebration of life. But again, another man who definitely marched to his own drummer. But it's so smart and just great stories and funny man. So.
Yep, agreed. So.
Well, Danny, thank you so much. Again,
thank you so much.
This was really exciting for me once I started finding a little more about you. And man, if you guys get this project off the ground, A, I'm coming to watch.
Me too.
And B, we want you back on.
Cool.
Just talk about it. And for anybody out there, again, please go see some of his videos on YouTube. Man, some of those videos of his runs are pretty amazing. And hey, I did have one question for you. I noticed at the end of that run, you lifted the canopy, before it stopped. And were you just trying to get air in?
Yeah. I mean, you're 110 degrees and you're sweating, and they don't let you have oxygen in the car, but I have scuba air, because of nitro. One engine's in front of me, so you got 87% nitro, and you don't want to pass out at that speed. Just to get some air and to try to cool off and kind of go, made that one.
Yeah. I didn't know if the sand in that, or salt coming off the front wheels, does it come back and get you or no?
No, we're sealed off really, really, really well to keep that from happening. So
okay.
Yeah, no, I just wanted some air, and I mean you're probably 140, 50 degrees inside. You're sitting in between two engines and sweating and losing. I don't have much body fat as it is, but you lose some pounds and everything. And if I build a new car, it'll have enough room to have a cool suit in it. This car didn't have any room to. We had 1968 when all that stuff was built, and helmets are way bigger now, and everything's bigger. So trying to stuff me into that, it took me weeks to learn how to get out of that car, because part of safety inspection scrutineering is you all bolted in with your Hans device on and helmet and gloves and all that stuff, and then they say, okay, you're on fire, you got 30 seconds to get out. So you got to get the canopy open and get out of that thing, and it was so cramped, it took me forever. And then finally I'd eat my lunch in there. I'd get more and more comfortable in the car, but yeah, it was really hard to get out. Sometimes I'd get stuck, couldn't get out. So finally learned the system. So yeah, tight stuff.
And when your dad ran the Challenger 1, his head kind of snapped in.
Fritz Foyt, who was his crew chief, used to take his helmet and just shove it in and it'd pop it down underneath. And that was the same way this one was. Like I said, it was all built back then. So Frankie Hannerhand would take, my crew chief would take, and I'd get all in like that, and then they'd shove me and I'd pop in like that. So, but then getting out, you had to get, everything had to be right. The Hans device was always, a problem getting out without it getting snagged. But, I won't even go to the bathroom without a Hans device on, just in case I fall off the toilet.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for coming on our show. It again, It did mean a lot to me, and great stories. And I am definitely looking forward to going out there and watching you run again.
Cool. Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it, and good luck with your show. And I hope it grows and grows and grows, and your audience grows. And cheers to you guys.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Danny.
Okay.